Bard is without a doubt one of the most unique champions that we have in League of Legends. He's an enchanter support that also provides some utility and also has the capability to engage. Overall, he's a extremely complex champion that has a lot of room to make some plays and be really fancy and help carry your team to victory. What's going on, Nasteey Nation? It's Nasteey, and in today's video, I'll be going over my in-depth guide to playing Bard in Season 10. This guide is going to go over abilities, runes, builds, skill order, matchups, combos, and many more things that'll help you take your Bard to the next level. With all that being said, be sure to leave a like on the video if you do go on to enjoy it or find it helpful. Drop a comment down below letting me know what champion you'd like to see me do a guide for next, and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. That should just about do it for this introduction, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Before we can get to understand Bard better and how to play Bard better, we have to first start off with the basics and with his abilities. For starters, Bard's passive is Traveler's Call. This passive has two aspects to it, and the first of which allows Bard to spawn chimes around the map. Picking up these chimes will grant Bard some additional movement speed as well as some mana and experience. The second half of this passive allows Bard to use these meeps in the form of auto attacks, dealing extra damage and slowing enemies when hit. For most champions, the passive ability isn't all that important, but the Traveler's Call passive on Bard is actually extremely crucial to his kit. The chimes that you can pick up around the map allow him to roam around the map quicker and also get some more sustain. And since Bard only has one other ability that deals damage, the meeps that you can use in the form of auto attacks go a long way. For most champions in League of Legends, you don't have to pay too much attention to your passive. It'll kind of just be there as you play the game, but when it comes to playing Bard, you really need to keep this passive in mind because it will go a long way. Bard's Q is Cosmic Binding. This ability can be fairly difficult to understand at first, but once you get it down, it's pretty straightforward and extremely effective. Using this ability will fly a burst of spirit energy towards a target direction, dealing damage and slowing the first enemy hit. If Cosmic Binding is able to hit a total of 2 targets or 1 target and then a piece of terrain, then all targets involved will be stunned briefly. Not only does this ability make it so that in order to play Bard effectively, you have to be able to land skill shots, but you also have this extra level of difficulty on top of it where you have to hit either 2 people or line it up with terrain in order to make it as effective as possible. Bard's W is Caretaker's Shrine. Using this ability on the ground will create a shrine at a target location that builds up in power over 10 seconds. After the full duration of those 10 seconds, the shrine will be increasingly stronger and heal for bonus health. You can also use this ability on a target, including yourself, and that will heal you briefly and grant some bonus movement speed. In comparison to other caster supports, this heal is not all that effective. Considering you have to drop it on the ground and let it charge up before it's strong, it's not nearly as simple and straightforward as a heal from a champion like Nami, where you could just point and click and get a strong heal right away. So when you are playing Bard, keep that in mind and don't try to rely on this heal being extremely powerful. Bard's E is Magical Journey. Using this ability on a piece of terrain will open a portal that allows any player in the game to travel through it. Allies will travel at a faster speed while enemies will travel at a slower speed. This ability can be used in a ton of different ways. It could be used as a way to help get closer to the enemy team. It could be used as a way to escape and run away from the enemy team, or it could even be used just as a way to get to lane faster. Overall, this ability has a lot of usages, and the more that you play Bard, the more opportunities that you'll see to use it. And finally, we have Bard's R, his ultimate ability, which is Tempered Fate. Using this ability will send magical energy towards a target location, putting all targets within that range in a stasis. This ability will work on allies, enemies, minions, turrets, monsters, and pretty much anything that's in the game. This is another one of those abilities that is very unique and has a lot of different usages, so the more you play Bard, the more opportunities you'll see to use this ability, whether it be for the sake of peeling, engaging, or something else. As for the best max order for Bard, I would recommend maxing Q first, W second, and E third. Q is going to be the only ability that you have aside from your passive that allows you to do damage and make plays, so you're definitely going to want to put a large emphasis on that ability. Up next, you have Bard's W. Again, this isn't an ability that is as strong as other healing supports in the game, other enchanter supports in the game, but it is going to be your next best ability. And finally, you have Bard's E. You max this ability last because it's not nearly as strong as it once was. In the past, the more points that you would put into this ability, the faster that your allies would go through the portal, but these days they've made it so that allies go through it at a faster speed regardless of how many points you put into it. So it's for that reason mainly that we put off putting points into E until last. My recommended rune page for Bard starts off in the Resolve tree with Guardian, followed by Font of Life, Bone Plating, and Revitalize. Since Bard is a ranged champion, he has the ability to stand next to his carries, making it really easy to proc Guardian. On top of this, he has his W, which he can also use to help proc Guardian. Overall, it's a really safe rune, it's a really easy rune to proc as Bard, and it'll help you be a little bit tankier and help keep your teammates alive a little bit longer. Font of Life is also extremely effective because you can use this anytime you proc your Q on the enemy or anytime you auto attack with your Meep slow. Up next you have Bone Plating. This is just going to allow you to be a little bit tankier in the lane phase and look to make more plays without being as afraid of taking as much damage. And finally you have Revitalize to finish off the resolve tree. This is going to work really well with Bard's W, making those a little bit stronger. Anytime you can play a support champion and take Zombie Ward, I highly recommend it. It synergizes extremely well with the support playstyle, and Bard is able to utilize this rune quite a lot. And finally you have Relentless Hunter. This synergizes really well with Bard's playstyle, considering he likes to roam around the map, and that extra movement speed will help a lot with doing that. So this is the rune page that I have been running in 100% of my Bard games, but because I wanted to have as much research done as possible for this video, I did go ahead and look up some other rune pages. To my surprise, there aren't too many variations out there right now. The only change that I can recommend here is that instead of going Relentless Hunter, you can also go Ultimate Hunter. Bard is all about making plays, and having your ultimate up more often will definitely help. And I also saw some people going Magic Resist instead of the Adaptive Force option. But again, I did do a lot of research on the rune pages for Bard, and I didn't seem to see too much variation, so this is definitely the best rune page to go for at the moment. For starters, as Bard, you're going to want to start with Relic Shield as your support item. I know that Spell Thieves can be tempting because it does give some extra damage, but at the end of the day, Bard is a squishy champion, so you want that extra tanky stats, and also having Relic Shield does allow you to manipulate the wave and push the wave a little bit easier as a support. Following that, you have your two boot options. You either have Swifties or Mobies. Mobies was nerfed this season, so some people have been a little reluctant to pick it. At the end of the day, I still think that it's a good pick, but you also can't go wrong with Swifties. Honestly, I think it's up to preference. At the end of the day, you can go either Swifties or Mobies, and it will work out just fine. As for Bard's build path, we have seen a little bit of variation develop for him this season. There are two different core builds that you can go for, and it really just depends on the playstyle that you want and the game that you're in. I think that both of these builds are pretty equal in how strong they are. The first of the two build paths is the more standard one. This includes building enchanter items such as Unholy Grail, Redemption, Shrela's, Crucible, Ardent Censer, and items like that. This build puts a large emphasis on making your heals stronger, making sure that you have a lot of CDR so that you can make a lot more plays, making sure that you have a lot more mana, and overall it allows you to be a little bit squishier but have opportunities to make plays a little bit more often. So instead of having a build that allows you to make plays with your abilities more often, this build allows you to make plays with your items. Stacking Deadmans with Bard's passive makes it so that your auto attacks will slow for a significant amount, and when you put Rapid Fire Cannon on top of this, you can proc that slow from an increased range. As a whole though, all of these items can work on Bard, but just make sure that you're deciding very early on into the game which build you want to go to, because you don't want to combine the two. If you're going to start with Deadmans, then you should be going Rapid Fire next, and if you go with Unholy Grail, you should probably go Redemption next. You don't want to mix these up. You don't want to go Deadmans into Redemption, and you don't want to go Unholy Grail into Rapid Fire. Next up, let's talk about the matchups as Bard. Bard is going to struggle a lot into champions that can hard engage on him. This includes champions like Blitzcrank, Leona, Nautilus, and Thresh. Even though Bard has a lot of utility that allows him to get around the map quicker, he's still a very immobile champion, which makes engaging on him extremely easy to do. Since Bard is a caster support, you will have the option in matchups like this to play pretty far back and play safe, but at the end of the day, that's not really what you want to do. It'd be better to just avoid playing Bard in matchups like these. Instead, try to pick Bard into enemy compositions that have a lot of squishy immobile champions. This includes support champions such as Nami and Soraka. It also includes ADC champions such as Varus or Jinx. Immobile champions like those allow Bard to engage on them very easily from a long range using his ultimate, follow that up with his Q, and lock them down for some really easy kills. Now let's jump into some gameplay and talk about the early game and the lane phase as Bard. Bard does have potential to be a lane bully in the early game, but you really have to know how to play Bard well in order to do so. I would say that the most important thing to keep in mind when playing Bard in the lane phase is the fact that your Q can be procced through minions. If you're able to keep your distance and stay behind your minion wave while also having the threat of stunning your enemy through the minions, you're going to be a big problem for the enemy to deal with. Another thing to keep in mind during this lane phase is the fact that your auto attacks do a lot of damage. Don't be afraid to walk up with the enemy, trade some auto attacks, and back off. Do keep in mind though that you only want to go for these trades when your Q is up and your passive is up, so keep an eye out for those and don't be going too aggressive if those abilities aren't ready. Aside from the lane phase itself, another thing that you're going to want to put a large emphasis on as Bard in the early game is roaming. When I think of a roaming champion, Bard is the champion that comes to mind. He has such a good kit for it, and the chimes especially allow him to get around the map super easily and get back to lane without leaving his ADC in lane for too long by himself. As Bard, you're going to have the capability to leave lane for 10 seconds at a time and come back really easily in comparison to other support champions who, in order to do so, would take twice as long. While roaming around the map, be sure to collect as many chimes as possible to get your mana up, get your experience up, and grant some bonus movement speed. Look around to other lanes to see if you can peek your head in there real quick and maybe get a gank off, or maybe just get some deep vision. You also have the opportunity when roaming as Bard to team up with your jungler and gank with them. You may even find yourself an opportunity to gank your own lane with your jungler by using a portal behind the enemy. Overall, there's a lot of different things that you can accomplish and a lot of different approaches you can have when roaming as Bard. The main thing to emphasize here is the fact that you need to be roaming as Bard in order to play him as efficient and effective as possible. And now the final thing that I want to talk about is team fighting in the late game as Bard. Team fighting as Bard can be extremely difficult sometimes because your ultimate can either save the game for your team or it can hurt your team a lot and end the game for your team. The main things that you want to be looking out for in late game team fights as Bard is the opportunities to engage, peel, or pick off an enemy. If you see a champion by themselves, you could try to ult them and layer that with your Q for a free kill. If you see a team fight break out and you see a large cluster of the enemy ults stacked up together, you could try to ult them to prevent them from getting in the fight and thus peeling. Aside from your ultimate, make sure that in your team fights you're auto attacking as much as possible to proc your passive. Make sure that you're lining up your Q so you can stun as many targets as possible. Try to use your W on low HP targets or anybody that may just need a guardian buff at the time, and use your magical journey to help your team maybe reposition or help yourself reposition in a team fight. Well, alright then, ladies and gentlemen, that should just about wrap up this in-depth guide to playing Bard in Season 10. Again, if you guys did go on to enjoy the video or find it helpful, please be sure to drop a comment down below letting me know what champion you'd like to see me do a guide for next, and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of this one. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.